Just over a year ago, I launched my campaign for president. When I began, I said the campaign was grounded in my love for our country. Just last week, my mother, a first-generation immigrant, got to vote for her daughter for president. Only in America. I am filled with the gratitude for the outpouring of support we've received from all across our great country. But the time has now come to suspend my campaign.
And when she says suspended a sentence, that means she's out. She's gone, but she's not endorsing Trump. Not endorsing Trump. Wait till you hear the mental meltdown they're having at CNN. There is a preliminary report that CNN viewers across the country are shooting themselves in the head. Because, they get their news from CNN, and it's never good. And they have that communist, racist Van Jones, who they love. The Obama White House brought him in, adoring him for being a communist. He self-described as a communist last time anybody asked him. Of course, they've been paying him millions of dollars since then, so. But wait till you hear this. Now, I mentioned Dana Perino last night after President Trump spoke, and then I want to get back to some crazy CNN stuff. And Mitch McConnell, I've got Mitch McConnell news, if that's possible, but a little bit of news. And more media mental illness. God, they're mentally ill, these people. Honestly, they should open a camp in Guyana in South America and line up for the Kool-Aid. These people are demented. It's a Jonestown death cult. It's the Democrat Party. They're not Democrats. But Dana Perino, last night after President Trump spoke, said one piece of advice after the fact. She said, President Trump should have, being focused now. It's time to move on to the next phase, the next stage of running for president and bringing in lots of people that perhaps didn't vote for him last time around. And she said, good piece of advice, former White House official, of course, Dana Perino. And she said, President Trump should have said last night, Joe Biden, I'll see you on the debate stage. I challenge you to a debate. Debate whatever terms you want. Just you and me, with a moderator, without a moderator. We can talk for 15 minutes each, whatever the terms are. Dana Perino making this suggestion last night. And she said, I think correctly, then newspapers across the country would have the headline today, Trump challenges Biden to debate. And that puts Biden and the White House on the defensive. Now they have to respond. They know they don't want him to debate because his brain, she's a no good, she's a broke, that brain of his. And it would have been you can still do it. You should do it today. You should come out and do it today. But challenge Biden to a presidential debate. Again, President Trump doesn't have it fully locked up, but he really has got it fully locked up. And he needs to challenge Biden to a debate so that the White House can squirm and the media can do what the weasels in the media do and all that good stuff. The headline in the corrupt Washington Post today, Trump pulls closer to nomination. And the headline is not Biden. Right? It's Trump pulls closer to nomination. And if he had challenged Biden to a debate, it'd be hard for them to avoid that. They probably could at the Washington Post. But setting that aside. Now, Nikki Haley dropped out. We just played a Nikki Haley soundbite, and she dropped out of the race. And she is not endorsing thus far, not endorsing Donald Trump, which I think is a big mistake, but she gets to do what she wants to do. She's a big girl and everything. And there are a couple of other remarkable things. The crazy lefty Democrats who are so out of their minds about so many different things, how to narrow it down. But Mitch McConnell did announce that he is endorsing President Trump. And the news media is very upset about that. And the CNN, they're very upset that Nikki Haley is dropping out of the race because they, for some reason, think, well, because she's, a rhino and at least half Democrat and all of that stuff. So they want Nikki Haley, right? That's That's the thing about them. And I've got crazy stuff I want to get to because the Mitch McConnell endorsement has them going crazy again because they're all nuts. They're all completely crazy. Yes, they are. And I know I have the story here, but it's evading me now. It's hiding from me. Those crazy Democrats. Let's go to the Van Jones CNN mental breakdown with Nikki Haley dropping out because I did get a report that people, if you're watching CNN, that you've got a network having a mental breakdown on you, and let's go to Van Jones because he just in the last minutes ago on CNN saying, "Oh no, Nikki Haley's dropping out. This is really bad news for Ukraine." Now, how is that bad news for Ukraine? Keeping in mind, President Trump said day one he's going to end the war in Ukraine. And so at MSDNC, is it MSDNC? They're saying, oh, you know what that means? That means he's going to get Putin on the phone and say, Ukraine is yours. Now, that is mental impairment on an all new level. These people are very, very unwell. They truly are. The mental illness of the Democrat Party is more pervasive than it's ever been. Now, here's Van Jones, who last time he was asked, identified as a communist. And then he was hired by the Obama White House. And nobody's asked him since, hey, are you still a communist, Van Jones? Because last time anybody asked you, you said you were a communist. And and he says that, air pollution is racist and all this stuff, completely crazy. But 2005, he's describing himself as a communist. Now let's go to Van Jones on CNN just a short time ago after Nikki Haley announced that she's dropping out of the presidential contest.
Let me speak from my heart and let me speak from my head. From my heart, I tell you, this is a heartbreaking moment, and not just for people in the United States. If you're a Ukrainian soldier looking at a wall of Russians coming at you and having to ration your bullets, today is a bad day because one of the great champions of the United States being strong for our allies, strong for democracy, just went down in defeat today. And you feel more alone and more afraid of the future. If you're in Poland, if you're in Europe, and you're looking at a wall of Russians coming for you and saying, where's the United States? Today is not a good day. So from my heart, this is not a good day.
There was no war in Europe when Donald Trump was president. Russia didn't dare invade Ukraine when Donald Trump was president. Donald Trump strangled their energy industry and reduced the value of their oil because we were producing massive amounts of oil, energy independence for ourselves, which the Democrat Party is completely against because, the earth is on fire and we're all going to die soon, and they're a suicidal death cult. Donald Trump put Putin in his place. Donald Trump, you remember he was laughed at the United Nations when he told Germany to not become too dependent on Putin and Russia for their natural gas. And the Germans laughed, and then they invaded Poland. Speaking of people invading Poland, who invades Poland? You guys, honestly. So it's a heartbreaking day, not just for America. Nikki Haley dropped it. That means the communist loves Nikki Haley and hates Trump, because communists love war and death and bloodbaths. They've murdered more people than radical Islam could ever dream of murdering. They enslaved more people than the slave trade over the course of 1,000 years ever enslaved, and they did it in the 20th century in Russia and in China. Putin is one of those. Donald Trump put him in his place. Donald Trump kept the peace in the Middle East with 3 Middle East peace deals between Israel and Arab nations, on the brink of a peace deal between Israel and Saudi Arabia, which would have been game over, more or less, for the Islamists. But Barack Obama and Joe Biden feed billions and billions, tens of billions, to Iran, which is behind funding Hamas and Hezbollah and Palestinian Islamic Jihad and the Houthis. And that's Joe Biden fueling the terror machine, and Barack Obama fueling it even more. Joe Biden revived Putin's economy, and still, remember when they killed his main political opponent, Putin's main political opponent, Alexei Navalny. Joe Biden said, "Oh, now we're going to put sanctions in place, 500 sanctions." And I was sitting here with my mouth hanging open. We've been pretending to be anti-Russia for 2 years during their war against Ukraine, and you still have 500 different sanctions you can put in place, not 5 or 50, but 500. And we've heard nothing about them since, by the way. They just put out a press release. The news media gobbled it up because they're a gang of for rent street corner bootlicks, and I keep it clean because bootlicks and that. So Van Jones is mentally ill. He's a communist. He's a leftist. He's a racist, and he's a political commentator on CNN. Isn't that remarkable? Now, honestly, I got a question for you, Van Jones, communist racist. Who's in charge of the peace negotiations for the war that's killed 500,000 people between Russia and Ukraine? The answer is nobody. Not Joe Biden, not our Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, no special envoy, no talks at the United Nations. Do we even have a United Nations ambassador? Is anybody bargaining for peace to stop the slaughter of hundreds of thousands of people, while Democrats are gluing themselves to train tracks because 30,000 Palestinians have been killed in the Gaza after the slaughter, the massacre, the mass rape, and the kidnapping, hostage-taking of Israelis by the trainload? But never mind any of that. Who's in charge of the peace deal? And how do you think this war is going to be won, communist racist? You think that Ukrainian tanks are going to roll into Red Square and take away Vladimir Putin in handcuffs, you moron? Honestly. And Donald Trump said he'll end it day one. What has Joe Biden said? We need another $60 billion to keep the killing going. Oh, and Israel better stop going after the terrorists that are dedicated to the extermination of the Jewish people. This administration is a gang of criminals smuggling. They're engaged in human trafficking, we now know, too. Hundreds of thousands of illegal aliens. Van Jones. Where's the peace deal, Van Jones? Who's in charge of the peace talks? Are they in Geneva? Are they in New York at the United Nations? They are nowhere because Joe Biden is a war criminal. He should be charged at The Hague, I think, being a war criminal for doing that. And oh, it's heartbreaking. And if you're a Ukrainian soldier rationing your ammunition, really, they're rationing. We gave them $113 billion. It's only been 2 years. We need $60 billion more without anybody paying attention to where it's going. So, the country that gave the Biden family millions of dollars, and so many other Democrats and some Republicans too, millions of dollars. So, yeah, there's a wall of Russians rolling in on Poland. That's not happening. And I'm sorry, President Trump, our allies, President Trump snapped his fingers at our NATO so-called allies and said, you guys committed to paying 2% of your gross domestic product into the common defense, and you're not doing it. And you're sticking us, American middle-class taxpayers, with paying your bills once again, which we've been doing for generations. And Donald Trump said, don't become dependent on Russia for your energy to stay warm in the wintertime. And it's about time you guys started living up to your obligations, the commitments you made to NATO and the United States, that you would contribute to the common defense so we don't have to do all the lifting for you like we did in the Cold War and World War II and World War I. How many Americans have to die so you can throw bonbons to the back of your throat and slurp Chardonnay, you bunch of transgenders here. So we got that. And Van Jones on CNN, and it's all very depressing. No, Nikki Haley left. The world is in danger. There are words on the tip of my tongue that I'm trying to keep myself from using. These people are unbelievable. Here's the communist, racist / Democrat CNN analyst Van Jones.
If you want to, a year from now, watch Russian tanks rolling through Europe, then endorse Donald Trump and get on that bandwagon. But understand, you're going to wake up one morning and you're going to see horror across Europe, and you're going to have American soldiers, sailors having to go over there and do something that we could have done with dollars, we're going to have to do with blood. If you want to continue to see the country being divided and unable to govern itself and treat itself well, get on that Trump train.
his military background is that he's been pro-Soviet Union all his life, pro-Putin all his life, that he was pro-North Vietnam and Viet Cong when he learned about it in school, that he's never been on a military base, he's never had a civil conversation with a military person, he's anti-American, he's anti-capitalist, he's an extremist, he's a mainstream Democrat. Yeah, because the tanks rolled across Europe when Joe Biden and you leftists came into power, and now all you're doing is funneling tens of billions to the American military-industrial complex to keep the war machine going. Putin was in a box under Donald Trump. Ukraine was living in peace and funneling millions of dollars to the Biden family. Poland wasn't worried about anything. The reason Europe has to be concerned now is because of you, Van Jones, you communist racist, and Joe Biden and the hapless Democrats. Now, I think 8 NATO nations are paying more into the common defense thanks to Donald Trump. That bolsters the defense of Europe as opposed to what you're saying, which is the opposite of the truth. In addition to everything else, you're a liar, and your pants are on fire. Hey, it's Chris Plant, excited to tell you about our July 2024 Listener Sea Cruise. We'll be sailing around the British Isles, visiting Scotland and Ireland. Please join us. Visit ChrisPlantCruise.com. And today is Mailbag Day. We've got the mailbag coming up. I have the questions right here in my hand. Michael and I were just talking about this mental illness that Van Jones and the radical left extremist anti-American wing of the Democrat Party, which is both wings and the fuselage of the Democrat Party today. Question for Van Jones. Donald Trump was president for 4 years, and NATO was dealing with less funding then than they have now. Why didn't Putin invade Ukraine while Donald Trump was president? You told us that you communists told us that Putin helped Donald Trump get into the White House. And then Trump's in the White House. Why didn't Putin invade Ukraine then? Why did he wait for the spineless, gelatinous Joe Biden to take over the Oval Office? Putin helped him get into the White House. NATO was less capable, and he didn't invade Ukraine then. Donald Trump would kick his ass out of Ukraine. And now you think that Nikki Haley strikes fear in the heart of Vladimir Putin? He'd throw her in a prison and shackle her to the floor and abuse her. I mean, how dumb are you people? Honestly. Oh, it's heartbreaking if you're a Ukrainian soldier that Nikki Haley dropped out of the Republican contest in America. You people get dumber with each rotation of the earth. And if you're talking, you're lying. You're liars, and you're really, really dumb. That came out of the blue. That surprised me. I guess it's time to do mailbag, I think. That was Michael Piercy's way of saying, hey, it's time for the mailbag. Peanut head. No, I did. So many things to talk about. So many things to talk about. Still have our crazy media responding to last night and all that. NBC fake news. And I'm getting the mailbag. I have them right in my hand, right here. Got them right here. NBC fake news this morning. Breaking. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell endorses former President Trump. And they're very angry about this because they should self-immolate. I'm just trying to think of where it would be best for them to self-immolate. Somewhere near cameras, I think. And then a fake news reporter, a guy who pretends to be a legitimate journalist in Washington, D.C., but isn't. He's a Democrat Party plaything. His name is Jonathan Lemire. I'm not sure if he's a man, but he goes by the name Jonathan Lemire. Maybe she goes by the name Jonathan Lemire. He retweeted the NBC thing. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell endorses former President Trump. And he wrote, "It can't be overstated how McConnell's decision to not try to convict Trump in his January 6th impeachment trial opened the door for his comeback." Can you imagine? One of the leaders of the Republican Party not going with the Democrat Party's fake lynching. Well, it was a real lynching effort, but setting that aside, isn't that amazing? Yes, it is. Also, the Washington Times, your newspaper of record in Washington, D.C. I mentioned earlier the front page near banner headline in the Washington Post, Trump pulls closer to nomination. And they're going to self-immolate. They're Jonestown. Line up for the Kool-Aid over here, girls. Just amazing stuff. But the Washington Times headline, Trump, Biden hurtled toward rematch. See, that's a much more appropriate headline. It's a much better newspaper. It's a real newspaper. The Washington Post is filthy. It's not a newspaper at all. Haley is left with no path to nomination in Republican Party. She has dropped out since the newspaper went to print. And below that, Joe Biden looking confused. State of the Union speech. The State of the Union is tomorrow night. It's the latest State of the Union in blah, blah, blah. Speech to answer questions on Biden's memory, cognitive ability as president. And it may or may not, he's going to be reading off a teleprompter, but he may fall down a flight of stairs and then drop out, and then somebody will have to take his place. Also on the front page, because they know what's news and what's not, VA Secretary reverses ban on iconic World War II photo. And I spoke to you about this yesterday. Mike Glenn writing the story for the Washington Times, the excellent Washington Times. A senior Veterans Affairs official said she just wanted to promote a culture of inclusivity and awareness within the department when she drafted a 2-page memo last week banning any display at any VA health center of the iconic photo of a Navy sailor kissing a nurse at the end of World War II. And I talked to you about this yesterday, and then the VA secretary jumped in because he's a politician and said, oh, no, we're not doing, it's an election year and we're not doing that. No, really, we're all heterosexual here. No, they're not. So we got that. Now back to Mr. Postman. Look and see. Because mailbag, it's mailbag day, mailbag Wednesday, and I have the questions right here. There are no queries today, just questions. The first question, J. Radford, 61. J. Radford, 61. Who do you think will replace Lunch Bucket Joe? Newsom? Question mark. Gavin Newsom is standing over there smiling, and he's dressed fashionably, and he's got a fresh haircut because he thinks that he is in line, if not first in line. But he is so demolished the state of California economically, culturally, politically, with the violent crime, the gangs, the illegal aliens, the bankrupted the place, that he might be easier to take down than he thinks. Now, I just shared with you a little while ago that Michelle Obama's, some people call her Michael, because of her arms and other things like that. Some people, but her office, she has people. Her people put out today that she is not, the quote was, will not be running for president, which means that she's thinking about it for sure, because they lie when they talk. They lie. They've got this problem with Kamala Harris because she's a woman of color and a WOC. And Michelle, a.k.a. Michael, also a WOC, a woman of color. And, Obama wants the power. He just doesn't want to do the work, which is why over 8 years, he didn't destroy as much during his fundamental transformation of America as he is now doing with Joe Biden in the White House as a sock puppet. Gavin Newsom, one of the big problems they have is they don't really have a bench. Michelle might be forced to take the job and be told, you don't have to do anything. She didn't want to live in the White House. She don't want Washington. They got these oceanfront mansions all over the place. Her life is real good. Private jets, big yachts belonging to other people. That's all fine. So she may not want it, but she may be forced to take it. And let's not forget Hillary Clinton, who I'm telling you, they've dealt with the age issue because of Joe Biden, and she might even be younger than Trump. But she's still lurking back there like a psychopath, looking to jump in. Now, who will, I've said Joe Biden will not be the nominee, and they keep insisting that he will be. I still believe that he won't be. How they replace him, they'll go for the sympathy vote and I almost used a bad turn of phrase. They'll go for the back massage. I'll just say back massage. But don't rule out Hillary Clinton. The more Michelle Obama protests, the more likely she is getting in line. Gavin Newsom is telegenic, and that's all they care about. And the media will have sex with him all day, every day, because that's the thing. And they're so desperately paranoid and wretchedly mentally ill when it comes to Donald Trump. They'll force somebody to take it. But honestly, Jay Radford, 61, I don't know who it will be for sure, but I know they've got a rogues gallery of wannabe criminals waiting in line. Let's go to Mary. Mary, do you think Nikki Haley is holding on because she knows something? Like she has inside information that Trump will be charged and maybe convicted, and then she'll be the RNC nominee by default. Well, Nikki dropped out today, but that doesn't necessarily mean, because that's like, oh, she graciously stepped down and stepped aside. She might still have grand plans for herself, and look for her to go with no labels or, team up with Robert F. Kennedy Jr. or something to run as a third-party alternative, because she might do that. She is at least half Democrat. So that's, you can't rule that out. And is she waiting? I got to tell you, people keep talking about, I heard on Vince Colonnese's radio show, an expert talking about, well, President Trump will be on the ballot, barring a black swan event, an unexpected, big, bad event. And I heard somebody on MSDNC, well, unless something happens and Trump isn't the nominee, what they're talking about, I'm going to be perfectly blunt, is Donald Trump being shot and killed by a leftist. That's what they're talking about. And Nikki Haley, that's a part of dinner table discussion all over America, in and out of political circles. And I haven't really been talking about it. I've talked about how the challenge of being in charge of President Trump's security is a heavy lift, but I leave it at that. And Mary asks, I feel that this is the only explanation for her still to be in the race. And now again, while she's out of the race now, it doesn't mean that she's lost and gone forever. And Van Jones, the communist at CNN, would like to see Nikki Haley, because that'd be good news for Ukraine, because more war is better for communists like Van Jones. I got to say. Now, what her thinking is, but honestly, is President Trump going to be convicted in one of these kangaroo courts? And what does that mean? He's not going to prison. He's got Secret Service protection for life. What does Secret Service do? But I think, Mary, that Nikki Haley's still waiting out there like Hillary Clinton. I don't know if she's got a poison dagger like Hillary Clinton does, but she's not ruling anything out. I'll bet $1 on that. Now let's go to I.B. Canormal. I.B. Canormal writes, I think a little play on Abby Normal in Young Frankenstein, right? Marty Feldman. Abby something. Abby what? Abby Normal? That's where Joe Biden got his brain. But I.B. Canormal asks, I know it's cliche. If you could have dinner with a person now deceased, who would it be, and what would you ask them or tell them about? And I got to say, I looked at this, and my immediate response was someone that I had met many times, and we could use him now, Ronald Wilson Reagan. I'd love to sit down with Ronald Reagan. I also immediately came to mind, what also immediately came to mind was Winston Churchill. That'd be great. He likes a drink. And Winston Churchill and Ronald Reagan, I think, were my first two thoughts. And I'd ask Ronald Reagan, you've been watching from on high. What do we need to do? What do we need to do here? Because we could sure use Ronald Reagan now. That's a for sure. And certainly his advice. He could be, Trump's kitchen cabinet. And we were talking, Michael Piercy and I were talking about that before the show. And I'm not gonna steal his thing. I'm going to say, we were talking, who would you talk to living to have dinner with a person now deceased? And what would you talk about? And Michael Piercy said, this one's easy. My mother, his deceased mother. And I clutched my chest. I'm doing it again. So why wasn't that my first answer? Not with Michael's mother, of course, but with my own late mother. And then it occurred to me that my father, who art in heaven, as we used to say as children, who died when I was 5 months old, right? World War II Navy fighter pilot. And so I never got a chance to talk to him very much, only 5 minutes. I was only half as conversational at 5 months as I am now. But my late father, who I never had a chance to talk to, that would be a great one. My late mother, very close to my late mother, one of the best mothers in the history of the world, raising 6 boys by herself, in effect. And my mother, who I miss every day, my father, who I never really had a chance to meet and talk to. Those would be great. Now, in the political world, Ronald Reagan first, Winston Churchill second. And, maybe my first answer should have been my late mother, who died in 2001, and not long before September 11th, weeks before. And then, September 11th happened, a plane crashed into the Pentagon. My brother in Chicago is running around, oh no, our mother just died, and now Christopher has been killed in the plane crashing into the Pentagon. And turned out I was okay. That's right. Yeah, so my mother, my late mother, my late father, and on the political front, Ronald Reagan first, Winston Churchill second. Sane Maryland 2 has a question. What would it take for you to move out of D.C.? That's a fun question. Well, I tell you, look, I've lived here for a long time, more than 30 years. And my best girl and I are dug in pretty deep with our neighbors and our neighborhood and the neighborhood businesses. And we have good parking now. And the ease with which we both get to work without being caught in traffic on I-66 every morning coming in and out of Washington, D.C. Our neighborhood is still pretty good, although the Democrats are trying to ruin it, and they're pretty good at ruining stuff. But, we have professional reasons for being in D.C., family reasons, personal friendships, proximity to all the things that we do. But we talk about it. We do talk about where we will go next. So who knows? It could just be a matter of time. There are so many great places to live, of course. But we're dug in, and life is, for city living, it's pretty easy the way that we've got things set up. DWB asks, do you think that the fact that Nikki won 85% of the D.C. primary vote will be used to show that Trump can't get a fair trial there? Not to mention the other obvious reasons. That is a great and fun question. And I've got to say, when Nikki Haley won, I can't remember who it was. Somebody on, I wish I could because I'd give him credit, on X, somebody posted your very thought. Maybe it was you, DWB. The jury pool in Washington, D.C. is a lynch mob for Republicans in every instance. And it is clear that a change of venue should be demanded because you can't get a fair, even the Republicans are Democrats in Washington, D.C. And that is that's a great question, DWB. Do you think that the fact that Nikki won 85% of the D.C. primary, not voting for Trump, will be used to show that Trump can't get a fair trial there? And if I'm on his defense team in court and I'm moving for a change of venue, certainly I would use that as a key element in my demand. They never request, the left, they always demand a change of venue. Because you're right, you're guilty before it starts in Washington, D.C. And during the voir dire process, you know that the lefties that are looking to lynch Trump are making sure that they've got, like Venezuelan gang members with tattoos on their faces on the Trump jury. because it's a lynch mob. And the left isn't interested in justice. They're interested in destroying their enemies, the country, the world. And almost everyone is their enemy, except maybe Van Jones. It was Mark Elias, a very disreputable Washington lawyer, a Democrat. Mark Elias, who tweeted when Nikki Haley won the D.C. primary. He's a Democrat, Biden, corrupt lawyer. He wrote, in a city of 700,000, Donald Trump got 676 votes in the GOP primary. Tough jury pool. Yeah, and that's right. And that's why there should be a change of venue. And brilliant question from our mailbag, our wonderful mailbag. One of the things that I didn't get to yesterday was the Vice President of the United States talking about, we need a peace deal, not in Ukraine, not in Sudan, not in Yemen, but with the terrorists who are getting their butts kicked by Israel. Civilization against the opposite of civilization. And the Vice President of the United States, she should be our Hamas czar, in addition to everything else, saying, well, Hamas has to do their thing, man. Hamas's thing is in their charter, and it is the extermination of the Jewish people. Now, her husband is Jewish, allegedly. And here's the Vice President of the United States. Hamas will do what Hamas has to do.
We've got to get these hostages out, and that is one of the highest priorities right
Sure it is.
now we have. And I'll tell you, the president has been an extraordinary leader in getting us to this point that we have the 6-week deal.
Sure.
So Hamas needs to do its thing, as I talked about yesterday in Selma.
Hamas needs to do its thing. There is no 6-week deal. There is no hostage release. They've probably tortured and raped all of the hostages to death, including, 8 Americans we believe, but they don't know. Aren't they amazing? Hamas has to do its thing.